Hi, and welcome to Discovering Dataflix with me, Johan Brodfeldt. And we are continuing the Argus project. And today we are going to play some with the data dictionaries and do a lot of crazy stuff. Because, as you see, we have our server here with some information, but this is all saved directly on the server. And if we go to the dashboard and the template and look at a Windows server, we should have a version and a license. And I'm pretty sure that the version here is not the one from the templates, and the license we don't even see here. So we would like to have some kind of functionality that can go in and pick the values from the template, and if they are empty, show the default values, and if they are saved with some values, show the actual values. So where do we start with this little project? I think we first of all need to figure out a way to display the template values in here. So we go to the resource zoom, and how do we include? I think we cannot do constraint by file. We need a procedure on constraint. And then we need to figure out how to get the data we want. So I'm just going to copy some code over, and I'm going to explain it instead. There we go. And this is an SQL query where we check if the resource ID is the resource we're on, because that's what we want. And then the attribute should join the attribute with a label that's identical and a resource that's identical and a template ID that matches the resource ID of said template. And then we want to make sure that the B attribute, which is the template attribute, has the same ID as our own attribute, and the resource ID should be the template ID. This is a pretty complicated query. But what it does in essence is it figures out if we have a template and we don't have a value of our own, show the template value. If we have a value of our own, show that. And if there's no template and we have a value of our own, we of course want to get that as well. So I think this should do the trick. So let's see what happens when we run this. Resource. Oh, now we get nothing. That's probably because we're not activating this onConstraint filter. We need to go down here to on before show, on navigate, blah, blah, blah. There we go. Procedure on before show. And here we would like to send a rebuild constraint of the attribute and then refine the record from the buffer. So that should get our information that we want. Let's run this. And now we have version, and we have license, and we have test. And this is looking pretty good. So now if I edit this one and I remove the value from here, I'm not really, maybe I should go in again. No, if I delete that one, then it will delete what record? Yeah, then it gets the default value. But I'm afraid I could actually also delete that one, which I don't want to do. So we still have some work to do in order to get this properly working. What we do now, if I go in and edit here and change that to 0.1, it updates with 0.1 here. But the question is, what does my server template look like? Well, we've updated the server template and we want to add a new value if we change it. So if I go in here, click edit, and I change this one back, where is it? 0.0. We save that. We go back to our resource, and now it's 0.0. And obviously we don't want that. So we want to go into our edit attribute. And when we save, we want a way to know if this is a template attribute or our actual attribute. And in order to know that, we need to get the original resource ID so we can see if the parent resource ID is actually our own or someone else's. And I'm just going to copy some code in here for this to work. We start by getting the resource ID and setting this property. So we need this property in our edit attribute, but we get the resource ID from our resource that we clicked because we know we have it here. So in the top of this file, we want to add an attribute or a property. So let's add that. And now we can set it. Now we have another problem, because when we go in and rebuild constraint and refine the record, if the last record found, for instance, is from a template, the resource will be reset to the template resource. So we also need to restore our parent data dictionary in this view after we've done this stunt here. So we do a clear of the resource data dictionary. We get the, we don't have to web get the resource ID because we just got it here. So we actually can get rid of that code. And we take the resource ID and we find the original resource so that we have the correct one in our data dictionary. And as we are saving, we would like to get some information here, and we might actually get the values, and then we set the values, but we also want a resource ID from the property, and we would like to get some other information from the attribute, like the ID and resource ID. So now we have that information, and with this we want to figure out if what we're doing is a template or if it's not. And we want to do that by, in the data dictionary, create a new procedure or function in this case that takes as input the attribute ID and returns Boolean. So if it's true or false, that it is or has a template reference. And instead of just writing this code, I'm going to just copy it in here. And we have a result. We're going to make this in a short minute. And then we need an SQL query that we can call. And we set the current ID as a parameter. We get the result set back. And if the result set is a template attribute, then we return true because we have found a template. Otherwise it's false, and then it's not a template. So we want to figure that out. Now we need to create another SQL query. So we create an SQL view, and in this SQL view we're gonna make another of these elaborate queries where we check if the A label is a template label or the template ID is 0. Then we have a template reference, otherwise we do not have a template reference. And we check from the attribute table, that is our current attribute, to our resource, and then we check if the resource ID has an attribute TA that refers to the template ID of our resource, so that we can look up our attribute ID and then check if the label is the same and if there is a template. So we're actually looking at the label text and the resource template ID to figure out if this is related to a template. We might want to be stricter on the way we connect attributes to templates by direct reference a template, but then we would need another is template on the attribute as well, and not only on the resource, like this template ID. And I want to try to avoid that for now, at least. It might be that we need it in future, but now we do it like this. And we want to save this under the app RSSC SQL, and we want to name this attribute is or has template.sql. And now we want to include this as well in the data dictionary through this C attribute. And we actually did something similar in a previous video, but I'm actually gonna update that now because during the Scanner conference I've learned something new about these C SQL queries that you get from the SQL. And there we break for today. Because this video was dragging out, then we have 15 minutes left for next week. So if you want to learn more about the constants and how I use them with the SQL query, you will have to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And that's all for today. I see you next week. Bye bye.